The Sound of Silence by Ultimate AI Creations. They called it the Hollow House, a place where the walls whispered at night and shadows moved of their own accord. On a cold, misty evening, a young woman named Emily arrived in Larkwood. She was an artist, drawn to the town's picturesque landscapes, but also intrigued by the dark stories surrounding the Hollow House. Determined to capture its eerie beauty, she decided to visit the house and spend a night there. The townsfolk warned her against it, but Emily was not one to be swayed by superstition. As she approached the house, the wind seemed to die, and a heavy silence fell over the forest. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Emily pushed open the creaking gate and made her way to the front door, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. The door, surprisingly, was unlocked and swung open with a groan, revealing the dusty interior. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound being the soft crackle of the fire she quickly built in the old fireplace. As night fell, she set up her canvas and began to paint. The room was lit only by the firelight, casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. As she worked, she thought she heard faint whispers behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing but empty space. The whispers grew louder as the night deepened, a soft susurration that seemed to come from within the very walls. Emily tried to ignore it, focusing on her painting, but the sound became impossible to dismiss. It was as if the house itself was trying to speak to her. She felt a chill crawl up her spine as the voices grew clearer, forming words she couldn't quite understand. Suddenly, the fire sputtered out, plunging the room into darkness. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the whispers stopped, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. She fumbled for her flashlight, her hands trembling. When she turned it on, the beam illuminated the room, revealing that she was not alone. In the corner, where the shadows had gathered, a figure stood. It was indistinct, almost as if it were made of the very darkness that surrounded it. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the figure, unable to move. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Then, the figure moved. It stepped forward, its form becoming more defined in the dim light. It was tall and thin, with limbs that seemed too long, fingers that ended in sharp, claw-like tips. Its face was hidden in shadow, but Emily could feel its gaze on her, cold and malevolent. The whispers started again, this time inside her head, filling her mind with unintelligible words and images of despair. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure continued to advance, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. Emily backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The walls seemed to close in on her, the room shrinking as the darkness consumed her. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was the figure reaching out, its hand impossibly long, its fingers closing around her throat. The next morning, the townsfolk found the Hollow House exactly as it had been for years, silent, empty, and untouched. But in the corner of one room, where the fire had long since gone out, they found an unfinished painting. The canvas depicted a dark, shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room, its eyes staring out into the world beyond the frame. No one ever saw Emily again, but on quiet nights, when the wind died down and the forest was still, some claimed they could hear faint whispers coming from the Hollow House. Whispers of a young woman who came seeking inspiration and found something far more terrifying lurking in the silence.